Eiichiro Oda made a YouTuber quit his job because he hates One Piece theories, and he especially hates people who make One Piece theories on the internet. Well, this puts me in a bit of an awkward position, because this has become quite a big story and quite a massive overreaction to a sprinkling of misinformation. So let's get into the drama, and this all started with a tweet from Mr. Sandman on Twitter saying, "A few days ago on Shimofuri Seiya's radio program, it was revealed that Eiichiro Oda dislikes having the future developments of One Piece predicted by theorists." After hearing Oda's remarks, Uderon, a well-known Japanese One Piece YouTuber, announced his retirement. Now, a lot of you will have heard of Uderon before. I've referenced him on this channel, and he is, or I guess he was, a content creator who focused on One Piece theories and analysis, and he's actually the one responsible for coming up with the core idea behind one of the most successful videos in our entire niche, being Ohara's "The Best One Piece Theory You'll Ever Watch, I Guess," which was made about 4 years ago now, and very much changed the entire trajectory of English-speaking One Piece content on YouTube. So it's very hard to overstate the impact that Uderon has had on this platform in this niche, even if you've never heard of him. And so you can imagine that it must have come as quite an unpleasant shock to Uderon to hear Eiichiro Oda state how much he actively dislikes what he does, and hence why Uderon is retiring. Or at least that's the narrative that formed as a result of this. The actual story is a lot more complicated. There's a lot of misinformations, misconceptions, and a lot of people who are getting weirdly angry at something that may not necessarily exist. And yet another case of pointing out that you shouldn't just immediately trust whatever it is you read on the internet. And let's begin with the figure who reported this, a Sandman. He is a, how shall we say, slightly controversial figure in the One Piece fan base. What I will say for him is that Sandman is an absolutely invaluable source to English-speaking fans, because he goes out of his way to hunt down and translate these incredibly obscure interviews with Oda, as well as his former One Piece editors, and they have given us such a profound insight into Oda's minds that I have cited countless times in my videos. And a lot of this information comes from the late 90s or the early to mid 2000s. This was back when Eiichiro Oda used to do a lot of interviews, none of which are online. They were printed in magazines and stuff. And Sandman, he tracks all of this stuff down and translates it for us. Very good stuff. However, he can also be a bit polarizing because of the way that he words a lot of these translations, which can sometimes feel deliberately incendiary. And I do believe that this is one of those occasions. I wouldn't go so far as to say that he does this on purpose to troll people, as others would suggest, but English isn't his first language, and sometimes I think Sandman conveys information with a different implication than what was originally intended. And on this occasion, I believe a mistake was made with the tweet, because the way that Sandman worded it makes it sound like a quote from Oda, when in fact Oda wasn't even on this radio show at all. This was an acquaintance of Oda speaking, and what he actually said was very different from what was reported. So for context, there were two people on this program, and one brought up that the other used to make One Piece theories on YouTube and asked how many of them were accurate. And this is a response to that question translated by Manu from the Ohara channel. "Some things haven't been revealed yet, but it's hard to say how much I can talk about it. I mean, I kind of know Oda-sensei now. Calling him a friend would be overdoing it, but we message online. He's like a god of manga. So if someone he messages is out there doing fan theories, that might feel unpleasant. Yes, I kind of stopped doing them. Apparently, he doesn't really like them too much." So this already gives a completely different impression, because you got a bunch of people running around on the internet right now yelling about how Oda hates One Piece theories, and it's all based on not even hearsay, because this guy isn't quoting Oda or conveying anything that Oda told him personally. What he's expressing is a vibe. He says apparently he doesn't really like them too much. And I'm 99.9% sure that this impression comes from an actual statement made by Oda. And this was all the way back in 2021. Specifically the SBS of volume 101, Oda was asked by a reader if he watches any One Piece YouTubers, and Oda replied with, "I know they exist and I have actually watched a number of them. I am surprised. Everyone is really detailed, and the theories too. They actually predict future stories, so I stopped watching them, lol. It's dangerous for me to consider all of my readers to be at that level. After all, there are plenty of casual readers too. I need to draw One Piece so that it can be enjoyed by anyone. Seeing people that understand things so well will corrupt me, lol. I don't have to explain stuff here, they'll get it. So yeah, I won't be checking anyone, just get along and enjoy." So you can start to see where some pretty heavy misconceptions come from. It's not that Oda doesn't like fan theories and fan discussion, he's actually a little bit in awe of it and how accurate some of it can be. It's just that he doesn't like reading and engaging with it himself. Oda worries that if he engages too much or at all in that One Piece fan theory culture, then it will, quote, corrupt him and hinder his ability to draw a story for everyone. Because as he's writing, he'll be considering the hardcore fictional pirate fans on the internet too much, rather than the average person in Japan who picks up a copy of Weekly Shonen Jump every week at a konbini. Or say the average person in the US bringing up Manga Plus on their phone and reading a chapter on their way to work. Or the average person seeking award-winning flavor, but that's a different matter. And that's why we have the sponsor of today's video, Fume. Fume it's one of these things. It is a no smoke, no vapor, no nicotine, no batteries, no significant damage to your wallet, and non-toxic, brilliant burst of natural flavored air for your oral enjoyment. And one that's also been specifically designed to break bad habits like a giant king breaking off his horns. A feat which must have required tremendous willpower. Most of us could not do that ourselves. However, Fume provides you with a powerful and much needed ally in the battle against bad habits by giving you something else to reach for instead. Something absurdly satisfying as well. Even if you're not using it for that sweet peak flavor experience, you can still fidget with it into infinity. Because my god NL, the tactile sensation of all the magnets and the clickies, it is completely out of this world. And over 500,000 people have already made the switch to Fume as part of their habit-changing journey. So if you are ready to try it for yourself, now is the time. And for a limited time, if you order the Journey Pack using my code GrandLineReview, you'll get a free Fume Topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. Just click the link tryfume.com/GrandLineReview or scan the QR code on screen to get yours today. And thank you so much to Fume because it's their sponsorship that allows us to bring you the best fictional pirate content possible as often as possible. So definitely give them a go. But for now, it's back to you, me. And so if Oda gets too involved in that hardcore fan culture, then he'll begin to assume a level of common knowledge that is in fact rather uncommon or even rare. And his writing will become impenetrable for a more casual fan who doesn't at all times remember every little thing that's happened over the past 3 decades. And what's quite remarkable about Oda, and I guess One Piece in general, is how accessible it is to anyone who picks up any random chapter and that's their first experience of the series. And that's part of the not-so-secret formula that has made One Piece the most popular and highest-selling manga series in human history. That level of accessibility for casual fans. And then there's that optional range of depth for the crazy, obsessive Australian men who spend 7 days a week writing, recording, and editing videos about these fictional pirates. And this is actually something that I myself have to consider a lot. I generally try not to assume that viewers of this channel have too much knowledge, because you're all incredibly intelligent and, may I say, aesthetically appealing individuals. But you guys have got your own lives to live. I'm sure you're doing your own things. Which leads me to repeating myself a lot across videos because I try not to make the assumption that everyone has a certain level of knowledge. Even if I've said something in a previous video, because a new viewer won't necessarily have watched that previous video, I go and say it again. So I do get where Oda's coming from here. I also think it is possible to be, well, his word is corrupted, but I think it is very possible to be corrupted by the theories of others. So I try to limit the intake of other One Piece content that I watch from other One Piece creators so that I can keep my opinions mostly my own. Because if you watch enough content, eventually your thoughts are going to be, at least subconsciously, affected by the media you consume. So again, I 100% get where Oda's coming from here, and the absolute last thing I would want him to do is watch a bunch of our videos and start to be subtly influenced by that, because whatever we're spewing from our mouths is not as good as what's going to come out of his brain. So it's definitely the best thing for One Piece and for Oda to remain in his bubble, which has served us so well for so long. And again, that doesn't mean that he doesn't like fan theories or fan culture. It's just that he doesn't want the story to be in any way compromised by it, and neither do I. So in that regard, I do think that Sandman has done quite a disservice by not making the context of what was said clear, namely that it was not Oda's words, it was not him being interviewed, and secondly that it was also completely speculation from the speaker, almost certainly based on the SBS answer that I read out. But things get slightly more complicated when we get back to Uderon, who did indeed retire after the show was broadcast. And he did cite this comment as one of the reasons why, but it was not the primary reason. Uderon was in fact retiring because his channel just wasn't getting the views required to make it a worthwhile endeavor. And if you look at his channel, you'll see a lot of videos that are getting around 20,000 views on average, sometimes less, sometimes more. And to be completely blunt, that's just not enough to sustain a career. Not with the length of his videos, and not with his posting frequency, which was about once a week. I know that 20,000 views sounds like a lot. 20,000 is so many, you could fill a small stadium with that many people, but most YouTubers don't make anywhere near as much money as people think, especially not ones in this niche. If you're talking about beauty, fitness, or personal finance, then that's a different matter. But fictional pirates, I mean, I think Uderon could probably make it work if he posted maybe 5 to 7 times a week, but that is such an insane amount of work. And the other incredibly important reason he cited for his retirement was his actual life. Things were getting very busy, and making One Piece videos wasn't really feasible anymore. And so hearing this comment on a radio show was more a case of convenient timing. It gave Uderon the final permission to say goodbye. But the way that Sandman worded it made it sound like Oda hates theories, and it is such a profound dislike that it essentially forced a One Piece YouTuber to quit. That is, unfortunately, the narrative that spawned from this, in reality, kind of nothing statement, which also isn't helped by YouTubers who jumped onto this a bit too quickly, like say Chibi Reviews, who made a video 5 hours after Sandman's Twitter post about how horrible of a take this was from Oda. How dare he say this? Which is particularly crazy because Chibi Reviews also played Uderon's videos with subtitles in his video, but I guess didn't watch it all the way through to find out the real reason why he was retiring, nor did he try to confirm whether or not Oda actually said the thing that his entire video was about. He just assumed, and not to single him out because he was far from the only one, but he was definitely one of the bigger presences to do what I describe as jumping for the treat. And what that means is, essentially, I have 2 dogs, and when I offer a treat, one of those dogs is extremely skeptical and takes a bit of time to review the situation, including such factors as whether or not I actually have a treat in my hand before deciding to jump. Whereas the other dog will immediately jump at the mere concept of treat. There's no thinking, it's all doing, and sometimes that really doesn't work out for her. There's a lot of that happening here. Too many people jumping for the treat without thinking first. But this toothpaste isn't going back into whatever the toothpaste comes out of, and this narrative has already spread, hitting many One Piece fan nexuses or nexi, such as the One Piece subreddit, and of course the Pirate Folk subreddit. In case you don't know what Pirate Folk is, that's where One Piece fans go to be miserable. And so, we have the following thread. Oda made a Japanese One Piece theorist quit his YouTube channel for doing theories on his story. So let me get this straight. Oda, you create a manga that goes on for 25 years in a weekly magazine and cultivated this loud fan base of smart ales. People stroke you and suck you off because of your world building, the foreskinning, the lore, and the mysteries, and now you hate the idea of people in your country engaging with your world by uncovering its mysteries and characters? Is Oda exposing himself as a dumbass? As it turns out, Oda isn't, but the person who posted this thread is, as well as this is crazy, 1,500 people who upvoted it, and also most of the 400 or so comments reacting to it. It's a sign of an insecure writer, Imo. People coming up with better reveals, thus making you look like the hack you are. A multi-million-dollar writer that cares about theories random shitters on the net make about his story, whose videos aren't even seen by 0.5% of the fandom, is pretty pathetic, NGL. Oda is an idiot if he doesn't realize that his manga is one of the highest selling graphic comics of all time, and folks are going to engage with his material and analyze the shit out of it. People will always theorize based on how the story is written. He has no one to blame but himself. And just to reiterate, because this is extremely important, all of these people are getting angry and miserable over something that never actually happened. Oda never said this, but because this has spread so far, it's now going to become one of those fan-based myths. There's already quite a few of these myths that are almost always based on bad translations of an interview, and I don't think this one gets spread quite as much anymore, but when I first started reading and watching One Piece, it was a very common myth to say that if a human ate Chopper's devil fruit, then they would achieve enlightenment, which was based on a confusing comical non-answer that Oda gave to that question in an SBS that was horrendously translated back in the day. And another one of those myths that's actually quite relevant to this topic is that allegedly Oda once said that if any fan managed to predict the ending to One Piece, then he would actively go out of his way to change it. I see this one brought up a lot, and it's actually re-emerged with this discussion. And so now what we've got are myths turning into a compound myth. The idea being that Oda doesn't want to have to go out of his way to change the ending, so he's trying to Leloucia all One Piece theorists out of existence before any of them discover it. But weirdly enough, there is a bit more truth to this one though. Oda did in fact say this in 2019 during an appearance on Fuji TV. I believe the show was called Honmadeka, which is a very classical kind of Japanese chat show, and it's where we learned a lot of very cool stuff, such as Oda having a whopping 10 assistants that work with him on drawing One Piece, which is apparently what you need to bring to life such a wildly detailed manga weekly. It's also where Oda revealed that he only sleeps for 3 hours a day, which is apparently from 9 AM to midday, and because this was from so long ago, they also hilariously asked Oda if One Piece is going to be over 100 volumes, and as of recording this video, we're currently at 111. But the host host of this show then went on to ask what would happen if a fan managed to guess the ending of One Piece, and Oda jokingly replied that he would have to change the ending, which Anime News Network picked up and ran with, publishing this statement as if it was made in all seriousness and unleashing this myth onto the fan base. But look, there is an interesting discussion to be had on the topic of whether or not One Piece theories are actually getting very close to hitting the mark, and whether or not somebody has already accurately predicted big reveals being saved for the end of the series, because as we get more and more information in the final saga, these pieces are coming together. It's like playing Hangman. When you filled in enough letters, eventually the word becomes easy to guess. And I don't think we're quite at that stage yet, but a point will come in a couple of years where we've got enough information that someone somewhere is going to make a theory that pretty much spoils the end of One Piece, which is a very bizarre place for our online culture to be in. For most of its lifespan, the appeal of One Piece theories has been the infinite potential, that there's so much left to explore and to be done, that people were having a lot of fun exploring crazy ideas and connections. But gradually, as One Piece prepares to wrap up, fans are being funneled into increasingly common tunnels of thought, because the possibilities for the future have significantly narrowed, as is expected when a story starts to reach its end. And it's definitely a lot harder to come up with interesting and unique theories than it used to be, and now a lot of speculation tends to center around trying to predict when exactly the end of One Piece will be, rather than all the crazy crap that's going to happen along the way. But look, again, I don't think we're quite at that point yet. However, there may come a time in the future where One Piece theory videos do genuinely turn into One Piece spoiler videos. But you let me know what you think about all of this, and in fact, let me know what you think about anything you want in the comments below. And thank you so much to Fume again for sponsoring this video, and definitely check them out through the link in the description.